The fog settled over the forest like a woolen shawl, and Lida walked along the path that sometimes appeared in the damp blades of grass and sometimes vanished beneath a carpet of needles. She had come here as she had in childhood, to the dark river, the creaking bridge, the little gully where she once found a clay beetle with white paint on its back. Back then the forest had been comprehensible. Every hill had its own name, every pine its own rustle. Now everything blended into one even sound, like breathing. She walked without a compass and without a watch. She'd left her phone in the car by the dirt road, the battery was dead, and she didn't want to see the time anyway. In the city, time shrank into corridors and nameplates, but in the forest it seemed to expand, to become water you could step into and dissolve within. Lida walked until the path led her to the river. The river drifted, as always, quietly, as if lost in thought. Only there was one odd thing: faint words were rolling along the surface of the water, from upstream to downstream. Lida listened, a near whisper, like someone speaking on the opposite bank and sending the echo back. She couldn't make out a single word and even smiled at her own imaginings. Rivers don't talk. But the whisper didn't stop, on the contrary, it grew a touch more insistent, as if calling. Lida remembered the old watchman's hut on the rise, where the forester used to sit. She thought the view would be better from there. She climbed the damp trail, pushing aside branches. The hut was indeed still there, darkened, its roof thoroughly steeped in moss. The door stood ajar. Inside smelled of mildew and cold ash. Hooks hung on the wall, one empty, one holding a faded floral kerchief. On the table stood a glass jar of water and 3 thin twigs crossed like a letter. Lida ran her fingers over the tabletop and suddenly felt a familiar splinter. As a child she had left a scratch on that table, a little lightning bolt. The lightning was still there, but beside it another had appeared, shorter, with a single sharp angle, as if someone had tried to copy the drawing with their left hand. She smirked and was about to leave when she noticed an old metal alarm clock on the windowsill, long since stopped. The hand stood at 7:14. The minute hand trembled, barely, as if a fly were trapped beneath the glass. But there was no sound. She sat down on a stool and, not trusting herself, pressed her ear to the clock. Something inside was ticking, barely audible. Time, like water, was seeping through the rust. Lida didn't know why it moved her so much, but tears pricked her eyes. She remembered how her mother used to say, "The forest isn't a place, it's a state. Don't rush in it." Back then she had rushed. Now it felt right to sit and listen. From outside came the sound of a bell. Not a church bell, thin, like the kind on a cow's neck, only cows had never grazed in this forest. The sound was insistent. Lida stepped onto the porch and squinted into the mist. At the edge of the clearing stood a birch, the only white thing, like a chip in the dark jaw of the woods. On one of its branches a small iron bell swung, darkened by time. The wind was calm, but the bell was ringing. Lida approached and stopped in front of it. On the bell she saw letters stamped, LD. Lida raised her eyebrows. She didn't remember ever having such a bell, but the letters formed her first name and patronymic. She reached out, hesitating to touch the metal, and at that moment the bell fell silent. Silence dropped like a stone. Lida exhaled and drew her hand back. The bell chimed again, briefly, and a small object fell to the ground at the birch's roots. She bent and picked it up, a stone beetle, clay, with white paint on its back. The very same. She remembered the chip on the left elytron. "Who's there?" she asked softly, not looking at anyone in particular. The forest didn't answer. Only somewhere off to the side a twig snapped, and out of the mist a woman emerged. At first Lida thought it was her reflection in some pane of glass, the figure, the height, even the scarf, everything uncannily familiar. The woman stopped 3 steps away. Her face was Lida's age, but her eyes were a little older. "You were looking for me," the stranger said. Lida laughed nervously. "Me? No. She held up the beetle. "I found this." "You were found," the woman corrected. And nodded toward the hut. "You left the door open." "Who are you?" "The one you could have become if you'd gone into the forest then," she replied, smiling in a way that made Lida feel both uneasy and warm. Don't be afraid. Here no one is forced to choose right away. Lida felt something rising in her chest, a sensation like recognition or the echo of a long-ago dream. She looked at the birch, at the bell, at the little beetle in her palm. Why the bell? She asked. To summon. Or to release. It's the same thing, the woman answered. You see, in this forest names aren't spoken aloud. They are rung. Again a sound as if split from within, and Lida realized it wasn't the wind that made the bell ring. Something was passing through them unseen but almost tangible, like hot air over a stovetop. The woman looked past Lida's shoulder. Lida turned and saw a child's shadow by the hut. A girl in a coat, with a braid, holding a piece of bark. Lida recognized herself at once, 5 years old, like in her grandmother's photo. The girl lifted the bark and ran a nail over it, a small lightning mark appeared on the surface. Lida closed her eyes. In her head the hands began to jump all at once, 714, 714, 714. What happens if I stay? She asked. You'll stay, the woman said calmly. And you'll leave. Here that's possible at the same time. I don't understand. You don't need to. Listen. Lida listened. The river spoke more clearly. The words formed not sentences but drawings, as if not letters but lines were being pronounced. She heard her own child's laughter, heard her mother calling from the porch, heard the glass fall in the office, the shoulder brushing shoulder in the subway. All of it parts of a single design she suddenly saw from afar, like a map. On that map the forest occupied neither the center nor the edge, it was the mesh, the weave, a shimmering nerve. If I leave now, all this Lida didn't finish. It will be, the woman said. Different, but it will be. The forest loves alternatives. The girl by the hut laughed briefly, then grew serious and went into the house. The woman walked to the birch and lightly touched the bell. It did not ring. She gave Lida a long look. You brought the right thing, she said, indicating the beetle. It holds the pattern. Without it the lines run off. I didn't bring it. I found it here. And you'll lose it here as well. That's how it should be. Lida nodded, not understanding, but accepting. She went to the river. The water was cold, transparent, like glass from an old cabinet. She crouched and lowered the beetle into the water. The paint on its back didn't fade, on the contrary, it whitened brighter. The river sighed, it seemed aloud now, with a human exhale. Lida heard her name not as a sound, but as the return of her place in this pattern. She stood, turned, and the woman and the girl were gone. Only from the hut came tick-tick-tick, confident, quickening, like footsteps on a wooden floor. The bell was silent. The fog thinned, a pale strip of sky showed through. Lida walked toward the dirt road, feeling the right path under her feet. At the edge of the clearing she stopped and turned. On the birch the bell swayed by itself, softly, without sound, as if it waved to her. In the car she found her phone, it powered on, though it had been dead moments before. The clock read 7:14. She smiled and didn't look for explanations. In the rearview mirror, deep in the lane through the woods, a child's figure flickered, or so it seemed. Lida drove, and the forest receded in a mirror's way, echoing her motion, not letting go but carefully folding her within itself. 3 scratches on the table, the pattern on the water, the white birch with its silent bell. And somewhere in the middle between what will happen and what has already been, a name rang that didn't need to be spoken. Only heard.